order and sing an obnoxious happy birthday. Sally, please lead us.
Everyone, on 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Yes, I think that was obnoxious.
Many more. Was that obnoxious enough?
I had my speakers on mute. Did you say something?
You'll have to catch the recording.
Wise man.
When John puts it on the website. So welcome everybody. Here we are, our merry little band for our August meeting. And I guess to get us all in the mood, and before we get too in the weeds, Frank Morgan is our presenter for the first 15. Now, before he starts, I will ask everyone to mute themselves. If you don't know how, I'll mute you for you. But Frank, take it away, please.
Okay, you're gonna make me host here so I can, or co-host?
Yes, I will. Just a second. Let's see. Polls, host. I may have to do this from the other one. Let me just, let's see. Continue. Participants. Host, let's see. Rank. More. Make co-host. You are now officially co-host, Frank. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right. Let me put this up here. A couple of months ago, you may recall that Jack made a presentation of San Francisco-based radio programs. And leading up to this presentation, I mentioned to Jack the program Cecil and Sally, which had come from San Francisco. Jack told me he wasn't including it in his presentation because it was from the 1930s, and this presentation was about the 40s. But he said, maybe it's time to revisit this cute couple. So I did. The genesis of Cecil and Sally was the office chatter of 2 young employees of San Francisco radio station KYA. John Patrick Guggen was an announcer and Helen Troy a staff organist. When Helen would pick up the mail, she would talk to John in a baby voice with a lisp, and John would respond in a Jewish dialect. They put together skits, and in 1928, they went on the air as an emergency fill-in for a show that had suddenly canceled. After 3 weeks, they were taken off the air, but were put right back on due to audience response. At first, the show was titled The Funniest Things. Sally often said to Cecil, "You say the funniest things." It then changed to Cecil and Sally. Under the name Johnny Patrick, Guggen wrote over 1,000 scripts for the show. Cecil and Sally was one of the earliest nationally syndicated shows, with radio stations in 27 states, 5 Canadian provinces, the Hawaiian Islands, Australia, and New Zealand playing the show. By 1930, it had an audience of more than 15 million listeners. There have been about 750 shows in circulation, but right now, 630 newly found episodes are being digitized from transcription discs. Following Cecil and Sally, Helen Troy continued working in radio. She was the switchboard operator Say More on Eddie Cantor's Texaco Town. The Internet Movie Database lists 13 entries for Helen Troy. Sadly, she died in 1942 at age 39. John Guggen left radio after a somewhat slow start, went to a stellar writing career. His many credits include a Tony and a Pulitzer Prize for drama for his stage adaptation of The Tea House of the August Moon. He wrote the screenplay for 3 Coins and a Fountain, and adapted the novel Love is a Many Splendored Things for the movie of the same name. He died by his own hand in 1995 at the age of 90. Cecil Shortridge and Sally Smith are teenagers. Their ages aren't clearly defined, except 3 years after the first episode I'm going to play, they are expelled during their first year of college for something they didn't do. Cecil lives with his Aunt Bess, and Sally lives with her Uncle Thomas. In my research and in all the shows I've listened to, I've heard no backstory as to why they are living with their relatives. They both work in a music store owned by Sally's uncle. And while it is not outwardly a romantic relationship, Cecil is jealous when Sally dates Alexander, and Sally exhibits jealousy when Cecil shows interest in Sybil. I did have a hard time deciding which shows to play for you tonight. I changed my mind several times before selecting two. They run about 7 minutes each. The first episode is from September 1930. Cecil and Sally are sitting on the steps where Sally lives with her Uncle Thomas. It's really the first of a 5-day story arc.
Cecil, let's go over and see the girl that lives next door.
Oh, we're all right. Let's sit here. What do you want to chase over there for?
I have a good reason. Come on.
Nah, you don't like her. Leave her alone.
I know, but I got on my new shoes and I'd like to make her jealous.
Oh, what a kid trick. Why don't you grow up?
Well, what's wrong with that?
Everything.
Well, every time she has a new dress or anything, she comes running over here.
Well, that's dumb. What do you care if she has a new dress?
Well, she likes to show off and it makes me tired.
So now you want to run over there and sport your new shoes. I guess you think that's going to make her green-eyed with jealousy.
Well, I guess we'll stay here then.
You darn well know we will.
I don't see why you always don't want to do what I want to do.
Because you always want to do something silly.
There's nothing silly about that.
The heck there isn't.
You make me tired.
It's a good thing you're sitting down, because you can rest.
Just the same, I'd like to go over there.
You go on over. I'll wait here on the porch for you.
No, I don't want to go by myself.
Well, forget it then.
I wish I had a good excuse to go over. I could go over and borrow something.
Yeah. Borrow some money and we'll go to a show.
What's the matter? Are you broke again?
Still.
Let's see now. What could I go over there for?
For no good reason. I won't go with you.
Don't. I didn't want you to anyhow.
What are you yapping about then?
Well, there's nothing else to do. I guess I can talk if I want to.
Would you just as soon whistle?
Oh, look, Cecil, look.
Where?
There, see the girl next door? She's going out.
Say, she's kind of cute.
Oh, it's only skin deep. Don't look at her.
Why don't you wave to her?
I don't want her to know that I see her. Look the other way, Cecil.
I want to get a good look at her.
She saw me out here on the porch. That's why she decided to take a walk.
Aw, at your age. Why doesn't she look over here?
Oh, well, she knows I'm here.
Well, why don't you look at her then?
Oh, I don't want to give her the satisfaction.
Oh, I think you're crazy.
Thanks.
Don't mention it. It's a pleasure.
See that coat she has on?
Yeah, I'll bet it costs a lot of dough.
Well, it isn't hers.
Did she borrow it?
It belongs to her mother. I'll bet her mother isn't home.
I'm going to whistle at her when she gets around here in front.
Oh, no, you won't, Cecil. We'll make out like we don't see her.
Oh, this is silly. Everybody making believe something. Why don't you go to the gate when she passes and say, I saw you come out. What are you doing with your mother's fur coat on? Isn't she home?
Oh, I couldn't do that, Cecil. That would be rude.
No, it wouldn't. It would be fun. Come on, let's do it.
No, you just want to talk to her.
I don't even know her.
Well, you're not missing anything.
You know, I've just discovered why Kitten is a good name for you.
Why?
You have the makings of a wonderful cat.
Oh, is that so? Well, I'll just tell you a thing or two, Mr. Cecil.
Don't bother. It's not worth it.
Cecil, will you do me a favor?
What? Go run around the block?
No, it's something else. Will you?
Tell me what it is.
Well, the girl next door is just going to walk around the block. She'll be around the corner in just a minute.
Are you a mind reader?
Well, I know. That's what she always does.
Maybe she needs the exercise.
She needs someone to take her down off her high horse. That's what she needs.
Oh, and you're that someone, huh?
Well, yes, I'd like to. So will you please do me a little favor?
I know. You don't want me to give her a tumble when she passes.
No, it's not that. I want you to, Oh, it's kind of silly.
Yeah, I know it, but what is it? You want me to go out on the lawn and stand on my head?
No, I want you to, well, to act like you're very, very interested in what I'm saying. You know, sit down on the step below me and sort of look up into my eyes.
What's the connection?
Well, I know. Please, won't you? I want her to see us like that.
You said she wouldn't look in here.
Oh, she'll look out of the corner of her eye, I know.
Well, what's the idea of me posing like we were going to take a picture?
Please, Cecil, I want her to think that I have you at, well, at my feet.
Oh, rats. I won't do it.
Oh, Cecil, please, it won't hurt you, and, oh, please.
Oh, it's silly. There's more sense to it. What does she care where I am? She doesn't even know who I am.
I know. That's what makes it all better.
I'm not going to park at your feet and stargaze in your eyes for her benefit. Oh, I feel stupid.
That's all right, Cecil. It wouldn't show.
No, I won't do it.
Cecil, well, will you put your head in my lap, please?
I'm not sleepy.
Oh, please, Cecil. You know, just like you were resting. Won't you do that for me?
What for?
For her.
Her who?
The girl next door.
Oh, Sally, you're wibbly. You're goofy.
Well, will you please smile at me then and talk?
What about?
Oh, anything. And please don't look at her when she passes.
Well, I didn't get a good look at her when she came out of the house.
Well, that's all right. I'll tell you what she looks like later.
Look, what's she stopping on the corner for?
Don't look at her, Cecil.
Oh, at your age. What do you want to let her bother you for?
At your age. I should let her bother me. Why, I don't even know that she exists.
Well, maybe I'm wrong.
Cecil, as one last favor, will you do something for me? It's not much, please.
What?
Well, will you hold my hand?
Will I what?
Will you hold my hand when she passes?
What's the matter with your hand?
Nothing.
Well, what do you want me to hold it for?
Oh, Cecil, you don't understand. Goodness, I'd hate to be as dumb as you are.
Don't worry. You are.
Well, my hand is cold.
Sit on it.
Cecil, you're the meanest person when you try to be.
I'm not trying. Why should I make a monkey out of myself just because a girl you don't like is going to pass your house?
Oh, don't bother then. I wouldn't want you to make a bigger monkey out of yourself. But don't you forget. I'll remember this. Just you wait and see.
Fine. That's a good idea. Let's attract her attention when she comes by starting a big fight. Oh, we'll just scream and holler at each other. She can't help but notice. Come on out.
Cecil, if you dare, I'll never speak to you again.
Well, you want her to look in here, don't you?
Yes, but for another reason.
Well, I'll guarantee that she'll look.
Cecil, what are you going to do?
You just leave this to me. I'm going to do something.
Oh, Cecil, please don't. Please. I didn't mean to call you a monkey. It just slipped out. I'm sorry. Please don't do anything.
Don't worry. I'm not going to whistle at her.
If you do anything, I'll just die. Please, Cecil, I'm begging you.
Save your tears, little gal.
Cecil, I'm going in the house.
You can't now. She's already seen you. Here she comes.
Cecil, don't look at her. What are you going to do? Please, don't do it.
I'm going to attract her attention.
Oh, goodness. Why didn't I go in the house while I had a chance?
Because I wouldn't go with you.
Don't speak to me.
Well, that's what you said.
Cecil, here she comes. Please look at me and smile.
How's this?
Please don't make faces. Talk to me. Well, haven't we had a lovely day today, Cecil?
Oh, I thought you said that you didn't want to speak to me.
Oh, why, of course not. I was just joking. That's all.
Oh, you funny person. What are you so red about, Sally?
Oh, Cecil, dear. Didn't we have a lovely time at the country club last night? And, oh, yes, won't we have a lovely time when we go down to the hotel dancing tonight? But then I'm so fed up on those things. They're so boring, you know. I mean, they are. They really are.
Well, the next episode needs a little backstory explanation. It's from February 1934 and takes place a year or so after Cecil and Sally have been ousted from college. With a loan from his aunt, Cecil has become the co-owner of an auto agency. His partner's daughter is April. Cecil has been trying to get the courage to propose to Sally and bought a book called The Art of Making Love. April sees the book on Cecil's desk. She likes Cecil, and in an innocent conversation with Cecil about the book, she thinks he has proposed to her. When April senses that Cecil may want to back out of their engagement, she tells him she is going blind. Cecil now feels he can't back out and plans to go ahead with the marriage. Hours before the wedding, Cecil overhears April on the phone trying to bribe her doctor to say she was going blind when all she really needed was glasses. Cecil is overjoyed, grabs Sally, and takes off in his car with her. There's a couple lines in this next clip that I think are pretty funny.
Cecil, are you crazy? What did you drive way out here in the country for?
Of course I'm crazy. I've always been crazy. I always will be crazy. What do you think about crazy people?
Oh, Cecil, start the car and let's go back. You're to be married in about 10 minutes.
10 minutes? What's 10 minutes? What's 10 hours? What's 10 days, 10 months, 10 years, 10 centuries, 10 lifetimes? I'm free.
Cecil, do you feel well? Start the car and let's turn around and go back.
No, I'm not going back. I'm not going anyplace. What's the matter? You do think I'm crazy, don't you?
Now, Cecil, remember, we've known each other a long time. I'm Sally, you know me. This is a lonely road. No one ever passes here. Let's go back.
What for? What should I go back for? You got anything to do?
Well, I think you should go to a doctor. Now, don't get mad. You just had too much excitement.
Look, do you know what's happened?
No, I don't know anything. You grabbed me and took me out of the house into your car and drove out here 60 miles an hour.
I couldn't talk while I was driving. That's why I stopped now.
Cecil, you know that April is waiting at the church for you.
Of course I know it. That's why I drove out here.
But she'll keep on waiting.
Fine. I hope she waits forever.
Oh, Cecil, don't act this way. Something's the matter. Remember what's going to happen to April.
I know what's going to happen to her, and I'm all for it.
Cecil, how can you say that? You know she's going blind.
Oh, no. Oh, no. It's the other way around. She's going to see things she never saw before.
Oh, you can't hurt April like this. Please start the car and go back.
No, I won't do it. There's not going to be any wedding.
Well, what do you mean?
Wedding, W-E-D-D-I-N-G. It's a ceremony. It's an English word. Maybe you've heard of it.
Oh, dear. I hope another car passes us.
What if it does?
I'm going to yell for help.
Hey, wait a minute. Let's see what time it is. In 5 minutes, I would have been married.
Oh, Cecil, I'm so sorry for you. You've worried about it so much that your mind has snapped. Your fine, splendid brain has cracked up.
I wonder what April is doing. I wonder what her father is doing. I wonder what everybody's doing. Whatever they're doing, I don't care.
Cecil, listen to me. They're waiting at the church for you. Oh, what can I do?
I'll tell you what you can do. Look at me.
No. Cecil, you let go of me.
You can kiss me.
No. No, now, Cecil. Oh, help, somebody.
Oh, so you don't want to kiss me? All right, yell for help then. Only the birds and the jackrabbits can hear you.
Oh, Cecil, you're crazy. Oh, I knew you were crazy by the way you passed all those other cars. Cecil, now let go of me.
Oh, I won't let go of you. Ha ha ha. Me proud little gazelle.
Oh, Cecil.
Come here.
Cecil Shortridge.
Ouch. Whew. What a wallop you carry.
Well, I don't care if you are crazy. You can't kiss me when you're engaged to another girl. You rat cute mule.
You don't understand. Everything has changed.
Something has changed, but I don't know what it is.
I'll tell you what it is. Do you know what happened back at your house this morning?
I don't know anything. I'm not even sure who I am.
I'll tell you who you are then. You're Sally Smith. I'm Cecil Shortridge. But you won't be that long. You're going to change to Shortridge.
You let me out of this car now. Help! Oh, Cecil, now don't hold me in here. I'll walk back to town.
Hey, now wait a minute, Sally. Wait a minute. Now sit still, will you? I'll explain everything.
I'm ashamed of you, Cecil. Poor April crying her heart out at the church for you. And it won't do her eyes any good either.
I hope she cries herself blue in the face.
Cecil Shortridge, you bluebeard. Will you let me out of here
No,
now?
no, wait a minute, Sally. Wait. Come on now. I'll tell you everything that happened. Everything.
I wish you'd tell me what's the matter with you. I've never seen you like this before.
I've never been like this before.
Are you going to go back to April?
No.
You're not?
No, I'm not.
Well, why not?
Because I wouldn't marry her if she were the last girl on earth. And it so happens that she is.
Well, why did you suddenly change? You know it's your duty to her. Think how you'd feel if you knew you were going to lose your eyesight, and then on top of that, the boy that you're in love with ran out on you, right at the very bottom step of the church steps.
how the engagement started. That I was talking to her about marriage in the office one day, and she thought I was proposing, and she ran out and told her father we were engaged.
Well, I know that, but you can't break it now. You couldn't be so mean. Think of her going blind.
That's just it. She isn't. It was all a put-up job. There's nothing the matter with her.
You mean she's going to be cured?
She hasn't anything to be cured. She knew that I wasn't in love with her, and she thought of that way of keeping me from telling her.
She said she was going blind so you wouldn't break your engagement?
Yes. I found it out at your house.
Oh, Cecil, I don't believe you.
You know why she wanted to raise money? Why she wanted your help?
Yes, she wanted to buy you something.
Oh, rats. She could have gone to her father for that, but she didn't want him to know. Oh, no. She wanted to bribe a doctor to tell me that she was going blind.
How do you know?
You hit me in the closet when she came over. Well, when you went upstairs, she phoned her doctor.
And you heard every word?
Every word. First, she told him it was a joke she was playing, and she asked him would he give her a signed statement saying that she would lose her sight in 3 months.
Well, that's awful. How could she do such a thing?
I don't know. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't heard her myself.
What does the doctor say?
He wouldn't do it. Said it was unethical. Then she tried to offer him money. I heard the whole thing.
And then I came downstairs and she left?
Yes. That's why I grabbed you and jumped in the car and drove out here like a wild man.
Well, how could she do that? Well, that's the meanest thing I ever heard of.
Well, she's getting what she deserves. It's a dirty trick to run out on her, but she was going to play a dirtier trick on me.
Oh, Cecil, I still can't believe it.
Sally, I heard every word she said.
What time is it now, Cecil?
Wait a minute. Look, see? Just think, if I hadn't hidden in the closet, I'd be getting married this very minute.
Oh, will I tell him for what I think of her when I see her?
You'll get a chance. We're going back. You can go with me if you want to.
I never heard anything like it in my whole life, and I've read lots of books, too. Oh, Cecil, you might have married her because you felt so sorry for her. You were afraid to hurt her.
You just watch me when I get back, though.
What about her father?
Oh, golly. Oh, I forgot about him.
You and her father are business partners.
Oh, well, don't worry. He's a pretty square guy. When he understands that I never did like April that way, well, and then when he finds out what she tried to do, he'll be on my side.
Oh, Cecil, I'm so glad. I've been so unhappy.
Every time I think of it, I get mad. Here I was, afraid to hurt her, wondering how I could get out of it. All the time, there wasn't a thing the matter with her.
If you had married April, I would have been an old maid, Cecil, sour and disgusted with life.
Do you wonder why I acted like I was wibbly? What if we had gone ahead without my finding out?
Well, you would have found out sometime.
Sure, but it would have been too late. Or I might never have found out. You might have said the doctor cured her eyesight.
What are you going to do now, Cecil?
Oh, well, I'll start the car and we'll go back. It'll take us a couple of hours to get back to town now.
I thought you'd never stop driving. I was afraid of you, Cecil. You looked wild.
I felt wild, too. That's why I tore out of town. I wanted to cool down before I saw April.
Well, are we going back now, Cecil?
Yeah, I'll step on the starter and turn around.
Oh, Cecil. Wait a minute.
Okay, what is it?
Well, I was just thinking, now that I understand, well, if you were to try and kiss me, I don't think I'd try to run away or get out of the car. It wouldn't do me any good to yell because nobody could hear me but the birds and the jackals.
That's Cecil and Sally, and I believe they reflect the innocence of the audience in the post-World War I and pre-World War II United States. I don't think any teenager today, that I know at least, would be able to identify with Cecil or Sally. But for us as fans of old-time radio, Cecil and Sally provide a fun window through which to view a simpler, less complicated world of teen relationships. Jack is right, clearly. They are a cute couple.
Thank you very, very much, Frank. That was simply delightful, I think. At least I found it delightful.
Yeah,
So this is terrific. And yeah, so now we'll try to sort of chug through the business part of the meeting so we can get to the important part of it that we're all looking forward to.
Wendy, can I
Yes.
just say something? Cecil and Sally has a special part of me that I'll go into later, but Frank, are you familiar with these pages? Can you see this? Do you know what this is?
Looks like a script.
This, the show had no opening. It's just the disc opened plain. This is the script, and I have all of them.
Wow.
This is what the announcer actually read. It came from McGregor and Soley out of San Francisco. And the announcer would read, "The comic strip of the year, Cecil and Sally, the funniest thing." And there'd be theme music. And the announcer would say, "Cecil and Sally, electronically transcribed, brought to you by," then the station would do the ID or their commercial. And then they would do the intro to the show. So for instance, program number, I don't see where the number is here right now, but Sally wanted the proper atmosphere to rehearse. And there was a complete paragraph of the opening, basically the end of the last show and the opening to this show. I've got all of these because I'm the one that was given about 90% of those discs to transfer about almost 20 years, I don't know how many years ago. We transferred them all. I was asked to hold on to them until the person who bought them could get them all transferred, and then he was going to try to get his money out of selling the discs. And while I was sitting on all of these, they got released. So, but like I say, these what never went with them were these scripts. And I have every single one to the entire series. I thought one day I would sit down, either have an announcer do it or I would do it and do the intros and then put them on all the CDs that I've got. But this makes up the entire show. You now have an opening and a close, which the discs do not have. Just thought I'd mention it.
Fred,
Oh, that's terrific, Fred.
I wish I had.
Fred, thanks.
That is really great.
That really is. There's no end to the surprises we come up with here. Are there any other questions or observations about Cecil and Sally? Did anyone have any questions for Frank or?
Great.
I got one question. How many of those shows are in circulation now? I know the circulation is very small. I bet you I have probably 50 or 60, maybe more of the shows, which I have not listened to.
No, I was able to find 270.
Okay.
Got more than that.
And as I say, there are 600 plus that are now being transcribed.
Well, we did them all. And I see episode 1, and the next page goes to, I go to 445. And the next sheet, I may not have all my sheets, but I had the inventory. I don't remember, but we had the entire series, the whole show. I think we were missing a few discs, and somebody else had those, and then I ended up shipping. They came in a coffin-size box, literally.
Oh,
This came in one of these boxes that fit in my garage. I had no room for anything else in there. It was literally probably 6 feet across, about 4 or 5 feet high, weighed a ton. It had to be delivered by, a freight company. And we would take them out and transfer them. I had my nephew working with me that summer, and he transferred most of them. We got to listen to them. It was just, we got really hooked on the series. But there were a lot. I mean, I've got them downstairs. I can't remember the exact number, but this log sheet shows over 450 right now, and I'm sure there are more than those.
wow, that is impressive, Fred.
Yeah, I think, there's, as I say, I had trouble deciding which ones to play. There's a great one where Cecil's taking Sally out for a driving lesson, and they get pulled over by the police, and it's almost Gracie Allen-esque, the way she makes things worse when she's trying to talk the cop out of giving Cecil a ticket, even though she's the one that's doing the driving. And the next day, in front of the judge, and it's just as funny.
By the way, episode 1376 is at the bottom of the list. So there were at least 1376 episodes.
Well, they were on 6 days a week.
Yeah.
On Sunday.
For quite some little time, I'd say. That's many first 15s to look forward to, Frank.
Yeah.
And Fred. Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. I always learn when I come to these meetings. So moving into the sort of dry part of the meeting, I'll try not to make it too dry. I have Joni's membership and treasurer report. On the membership front, there's been no activity, so our paid membership remains at 124. As treasurer, we only basically we had no receipts, no income. We spent $110 and our balance is $7,159.23. We still have an unpaid debt for 22 issues of radio recall expense, printing, postage, etc., which is in the neighborhood of $3,665. So we still have a hefty balance, but it's not 7,000. So I think we will survive another month with that kind of cushion. Now, let me see. Next on my list is a report from our print librarian, who I believe Kathy is here tonight with us. Are you still with us, Kathy?
I'm
Maybe
here.
You talk, yeah, you talk. Print, I'm going to turn it over to you. You're Print, so take it away.
To whom? Print librarian, anybody? I would imagine not a lot. Oh, so print librarian, yeah. Mark is here.
That's Mark.
Mark
Correct,
and
that's
Marcia.
Mark.
Yes.
Right.
Mark, good to see you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We've had no business with any of our libraries, so we're still at zero.
Not surprising, since we're not meeting in person and people are distancing. And yeah, I completely flipped my audio and print. So no action on print side, and audio side, I'm assuming no action either.
That's
Correct.
right. We're equally as exciting as Mark's report. It's equally as exciting.
I am in awe, and it's a cliffhanger for me every month. But thank you all for being in charge of this. Maybe we've had a little more activity on the VP front from Jim Pasquale. Anything to report on upcoming programs?
Upcoming programs, yes. Next month, Bill Harper is going to tell us about the program Straight Arrow. And in October, we're going to hear about something called the Radio Preservation Task Force from Frank Absher. And that's what we've got coming up.
That is wonderful. I'm still in awe of your ability to line up speakers, although with Zoom, that makes it maybe a little easier because we can cross state lines. So that's great fun. Also at Mank, we will be presenting a play written and directed by our own Edgar. Edgar Farr Russell III. Edgar, do you want to say a few words about that?
Well, thank you, Wendy. Well, this August, you'll have the chance to be a part of 2 radio club meetings tonight, of course, and then we've got a wonderful in-person program scheduled for our August club meeting at the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention. That's going to be in Hunt Valley, Maryland, and that will be Saturday, August 21st, beginning around 12 p.m. Get there early. Martin Grams, who runs the convention, as before, is offering free Saturday admissions for all our members. So that alone is a good reason to come over to meet the movie stars and the TV stars and see a lot of real interesting things. For our club meeting, after what I'm sure will be a wonderful introduction by our club president, Wendy Wilmer, and in addition to the usual 20-question quiz from Jack French, our club dramatic production features a wonderful cast performing an original script entitled Miranda's Miracle. And just to whet your taste, this play will involve 3 generations of a family. The subject is reincarnation and a powerful love which will triumph even over death. So hopefully that will get your attention and want to attend. As I said, we have a wonderful cast, but we still need someone to engineer the sound because we are not able to. We've reached out and we are not able to get our usual engineers. Also, I'm putting out a request for those who are coming that would be able to record our show either with equipment plugged into the sound mixing board or also preferably an iPhone or an iPad that can make a video recording of the show. We want to be able to give that to actors and cast and crew, and perhaps also transmit that to YouTube, for a future presentation. But anyway, so I'm reaching out to those who could either help us by engineering the sound or by recording the show. But in any event, it's going to be a wonderful opportunity. So if you're able to come, we welcome you. And again, my name is Edgar Russell. If you can help, please send me an email at edgar_russell@hotmail.com. And look forward to seeing a number of you there. And thank you, Wendy, for the chance to speak.
No, thank you, Edgar. I hope that it's really quite a wonderful script. I've read it. And so I'm looking forward to it. We will not be able to live stream it because the Wi-Fi speed at the hotel is not quite equal to sending this out over Zoom. So I do apologize for those of you who are at a distance, and we're going to do whatever we can. Maybe we will overcome that obstacle. We're certainly trying.
And Wendy's going to be in it. She's real good, if I do say so myself.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise. I'm going to be there anyway. So yeah, no, I'm delighted. And actually, yes, we're pulling my husband into this too. So I have my eye on him as a future member of the club. We'll see. I keep working on him. It's like water dripping on a stone. Eventually they all cave, don't they, Jack? All right. So, and in moving right along from live streaming to hybrid, I have been in touch with the church, Trinity Episcopal, where we traditionally have met in person. They are still not meeting in person. They are not doing programs there in person. So we are still on hold. And I anticipate us continuing on Zoom into October. So I will keep you posted. I am working on the church, but that's all I can tell you. They are happy to have us back. So that was a nice reassurance from them, because I had started to look for another venue, but I still don't have clarity on their Wi-Fi connection. So yes. Now, also, we
Wendy?
Yes.
I wanted just to say one quick thing. I've sent emails to all the cast members. We're having a Zoom rehearsal Saturday afternoon from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. In case the email goes into your trash pile, I wanted to give those who are here tonight the update so that you'll know. If you have any questions, send me an email and we'll get you the Zoom link. Thank you, Wendy.
No problem, Edgar. Thank you. It's been, I think Edgar has found that this has been a bit of a heavier lift than he anticipated producing this show. So, but he has not given up. He keeps plugging along, and that's great. Also, for those of you who may not know, may not have, I mean, because I don't, half the time when I send out an email blast, it lands in everybody's spam folder. But I did want to report the sad passing of Ellen Burney at the end of July. And I am delighted to have Fred here tonight. You look good, Fred. You can, I'd be happy to give you a couple of minutes. Fred sent me an email and asked me to tell people how much your notes and messages have supported him in this really brutally difficult time for him. Anything to add to that, Fred? Good. I did want to report that Bob Cockrum from Texas has volunteered to take over the editing of Radio Recall for the December issue. One thing that excites me a great deal is that Larry and Bob are working very closely on passing that baton. So there's a lot of cooperation and work. I believe there's even, I've heard rumor of a 2-part article where the first part will be published in the October Radio Recall, and the second part will be published in the December Radio Recall. So this is very, very exciting to have that on the horizon. And I want to thank Larry for extending his editorship beyond when he really wanted to. So thank you, Larry Maupin. For newer business, John Abbott is working very hard on solving our listserv problem. I believe, John, do you want to say a couple words about that? Maybe not. Well, anyway, we are looking.
I had myself muted.
Yeah. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, I operate better that way most of the time, but
me too.
No, we've had an ongoing problem for some time where members say that, well, we never get the meeting announcements, and we've always, been trying to figure out what it is. So I kind of took the bull by the horns and did some research and came up with a program called MailChimp, which is a marketing program which allows you to put out emails to a membership base. And so I did a controlled test of a finite number of members just to see what would happen. And guess what? We got the same problem with MailChimp that we have with our mailman program, in that some people got the email messages. Some people, myself included, did not get them. So I'm almost of the opinion that, to paraphrase William Shakespeare, the problem is not in the stars, it's in our email programs. And I'm going to come up with some suggested things that people look at. Unfortunately, there are about 3,723 email programs out there and 7,000 different ways to configure them. So it's not a one solution fixes everything, but I'm looking at it and who knows, maybe I can entice the editor of Radio Recall one of these days to put some suggestions in Radio Recall. Basically, it all boils down to, I think most of the problems are, I'm sure Lawrence Condrag didn't want to hear about this, but it's on the user side. Because I know myself, I have 2 email accounts that I sent these test messages to. Both of them in the same domain. One of them got the message, one of them did not. So, and why? I don't know. Spam settings are the same on both of them. I don't know. Maybe I've not been living a good life or something. I don't know. But I'm still looking at it. And once I come up with some suggestions, we'll throw them out to the 4 winds.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. For my own part, I happened to be rattling around in my Yahoo and I just checked the filters. Now, these were not filters I had created, but every time I send an email to mark an email as spam, it will look at it and say, well, why is this spam? And so it put, one thing was the word notifications. So I took that filter off and guess what? I get the club announcements now. It's just insane. And, some of it is the domains themselves that sort of take over. But anyway, we are working on solving that. Thank you so much, John, because it's pretty frustrating. So that's great. And also I needed to mention, I neglected to say that for Radio Recall, Bob is happy to receive articles, be thinking about things you might want to write about, or you might want to read about, or what have you. And, shoot those ideas to one of us, and we'll, it's always more material is better than no material. And I did want to mention, I heard, and I believe Frank Morgan was the person who made me aware of this. Martin is not with us tonight. He's on vacation, the slacker. I mean, the weekend before Mank. How could he do that? But anyway, he and his wife are getting a little time together, which is a good thing. And Martin has a new book coming out about the Lone Ranger, which apparently has been nominated for a Pulitzer. So that's pretty exciting stuff, I think.
Yeah, Wendy, yeah, it's nominated in the nonfiction general category. So, and the book is supposed to be out next week, and I think you'll have it at the convention.
So that's a very exciting development. And so if you happen to be coming to Mank, you may be able to track down a copy and persuade Martin to sign it for you. That might make a nice Christmas present. And since the Postal Service is raising the rates as of October 3rd for packages for the Christmas rush, you could even beat that. So, does anyone have any other pieces of club business or information that they would, feel a burning desire to share with the membership?
Wendy?
Yes.
If I may, I am making a presentation at Mank that will precede the club's presentation. So if you can get there an hour earlier, I'd be happy to see you there in the audience as well.
So if you're planning to be there at noon, just an hour earlier, that's still a reasonable time to plan to be there. And yes, I'm sorry, Frank, I neglected to mention that. My list just goes on and on and on. So, and guess what? It goes to the other side of the page. Ooh.
Wendy,
Yeah.
before when you asked me if I wanted to add something, my mic was muted. Can I just
Oh,
thank
yes, please,
everyone?
Fred.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone that donated to send that humongous fruit basket that came in. I mean, it was, I actually had a little hard time lifting it. I had a weight lift at that time. I couldn't lift anything over 30 pounds. And that came awful close to being at that level. But it was beautiful. It really was. I think I still have a few pieces of fruit, some apples or something left from it. But it just was filled with so much. So thank you, everyone. And Mark and Marcia, thank you so much for that letter that you sent. I made copies. I gave one to both of our kids, my daughter-in-law and my other son are out of town right now, but I think I emailed them. And I sent a copy to my brother and sister-in-law down in Miami. It was just beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for all the cards. I mean, I've got so many. I mean, I can't thank everyone personally, but thank you all for the cards and everything that you've sent and done for me done for us this past few months. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Fred. Wish we could have done more for you, but anyhow. So now I believe we're at the quiz. And Sally, you are already co-host. So you can launch the poll. I could also launch it, I think, in theory, but I want you to launch it, if you will.
Okay, let me see. I've got it up. Here we go. I do. I have the power. I have the power.
Don't mess with the Sally.
All right, everyone, it's quiz time. So was my video not satisfactory last month?
Few issues, never mind. We will forget about that, but we're very happy to have you here again, and don't ever think of not being with us again. Just saying, second Friday of every month, be there or be square.
Oh, I don't know how much is it worth to everyone. I don't.
Yes.
All right. So this is your opportunity to get your pencils and your paper. So please prepare for the quiz, children. I hope you've studied extensively about teens in old time radio, because let me tell you, I haven't. So this is going to be for final grades. Everyone have their pencil and papers and materials ready. I will launch the poll. Again, you may move faster than I will read, but when you enter it, you can move at your own pace. But if you're doing it on paper pencil, you're stuck with me. Poll launching. Thumbs up that you can see it. Yes?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Excellent. Number 1. Who were the two youngsters the Great Gildersleeve on NBC had in his household? A. Kilroy and Martha. B. Kenny and Margarine. C. Leroy and Marjorie. D. Little Roy and Margie. Who were the two youngsters that the Great Gildersleeve on NBC had in his household? Number 2. Flying High with Sky King on Mutual were the teen duo of A. Benny and Sandy. B. Penny and Clipper. C. Denny and Mary Jane. D. Lenny and Katie. Flying High with Sky King on Mutual were the teen duo of who? Who? Number 3. In Meet Corliss Archer, what actor portrayed her boyfriend, Dexter Franklin? A. Tommy Cook. B. Richard Crenna. C. Sam Edwards. D. Walter Tetley. In Meet Corliss Archer, what actor portrayed her boyfriend, Dexter Franklin? Number 4. The Aldrich Family evolved from a Broadway play by Clifford Goldsmith. Its stage title was A. Those Tender Years. B. Look What's Happening. C. It's Never Easier. D. What a Life. The Aldrich Family evolved from a Broadway play by Clifford Goldsmith titled what? Number 5. Captain Midnight and his secret squadron on Mutual included 2 teenagers. Their character names were A. Tom and Jerry. B. Chuck and Joyce. C. Pete and Repeat. D. Amelia and JC. Captain Midnight and his secret squadron on Mutual included 2 teenagers. What were their character names? Number 6. Maudie's Diary was an excellent but short-lived CBS teen comedy. Who played Maudie? A. Mary Mason. B. Sherry Mason. C. Carrie Mason. D. Perry Mason. Maudie's Diary was an excellent but short-lived CBS teen comedy. Who played Maudie? Which Mason? Number 7. NBC's Archie Andrews was based on a comic strip and comic book created by A. Elliot Maine. B. Sam Carolina. C. Bob Montana. D. Frank Washington. Perhaps I should restate the question. NBC's Archie Andrews was based on a comic strip and comic book created by whom? Number 8. The Tom Mix Ralston straight shooters had 2 juvenile pals for Tom, but they were eventually written out of the series. Name that missing duo. A. Rusty and Judy. B. Travis and Jackie. C. Bert and Beverly. D. Jimmy and Jane. The Tom Mix Ralston straight shooters had 2 juvenile pals for Tom, but they were eventually written out of the series. Name the duo. Number 9. Who was Judy Foster's boyfriend on A Date with Judy? A. Woozy Winkle. B. Oogie Pringle. C. Squeaky Hingle. D. Oswald McTingle. I think Judy should find a new boyfriend. Who was Judy Foster's boyfriend on A Date with Judy? I'll give you a hint. He'll have a strange name. Number 10. William Bendix voiced the father on The Life of Riley. Who were his 2 offspring? A. Chip and Dale. B. Sonny and Cher. C. Mark and Marcia. D. Junior and Babs. William Bendix voiced the father on The Life of Riley. Who were his 2 offspring? Probably the only one I will get correct. All right, that was our quiz, courtesy of the great Jack French. Those were tough, Jack. Those I did not see as many easy ones in there. Same. I hope everyone studied. This is what happens when you don't study. I'm going to leave the poll up for about a few more seconds. Well, I can leave it up running in the background, right, Wendy? I'm always nervous about closing this window.
Can you bring it up again? Because it went away without me pushing submit. Is it somewhere?
It's still up on my screen. I haven't taken it. I haven't stopped it.
It's not on my screen either.
Was it timed? I'm afraid if I relaunch it, it's going to disappear. What happened?
It's there now, but you have to refill in the answers again.
Yeah, start over now.
Oh, I didn't. I have to start over. Ah! No, Dave.
You don't have to read it again, but if you can put it up, maybe those of us can hit the answers and submit it.
I don't know what happened. Wendy, do you know what occurred there? Oh, kind of. Wild hand gesturing while you're muted.
Sorry, I was having trouble. I think I totally screwed it up. If you leave the poll available, people can sort of, I think, jump back in.
Okay,
to
I will not close my window.
their answers. So the questions are all there. For those of you who are writing them, that doesn't affect the poll, but for the rest of you, you can quickly scroll through, you know what your answers were. I apologize. They've changed how, Zoom has changed how they do the polls and put them together. And it's just, there's a learning curve and I'm a slow learner.
No
I do
worries,
apologize.
Wendy. We will open the launch doors for you.
Yay,
shortly.
thank you, thank you. And meanwhile, I need to make Jim, I'm assuming that Jim may need to be able to share his screen.
Yes, that's correct.
So I've given you co-hosting privileges, Jim.
Okay, are we starting with me
And-
now or?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm just about to introduce you, and you
Right.
gave us a wonderful bio. This is a man of many parts. I'm in awe. It looks to me as if you claim to be retired, but I think you.
Yes.
I think it looks to me like you're a lot busier now than you ever were when you were working as an educator or product manager or anything else like that. So wonderful resume, Jim. Do you want me to run through it all, or do you want to just give a few highlights? What do you feel is important for us all to know?
Probably the publishing and the internet part.
Yes. Well, you've been doing a lot. Jim has researched science fiction on radio off and on for more than 40, that's 40 years, and collecting OCR and listening to it since the mid-60s. He co-authored a book on science fiction on radio, which was published in 1996, called Science Fiction on Radio, a revised look at 1950 to 1975. It looks to me as though he's been published extensively, published extensive articles on old time radio, and created a podcast on radio detectives, which ran from 2005 to 2015, and is the owner and webmaster of Radio Days, A Radio History since 1995. And add anything else you'd like to, Jim, but I'm going to turn the reins over to you.
Okay. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that website actually I had the first old time radio related domain in the history of the internet at the time. There were two people that came on, Lou Jenko, who had oldradio.com, I believe it was called, and myself. I went ahead and registered a domain name before, and it was the OTR.com. So I've gotten a lot of people that will constantly contact me to want to buy that because it's such a small little domain name. So I'm still holding on to it for now.
Jim, may I speak for a minute? That Jim has had 2 articles in the GRTR over the last few years, and one was really an extensive article about his early days with electronics and radio, and the latest one was I set up a panel discussion about the future of OTR and OTR websites. So if anybody would like to read those articles by Jim and about Jim and about radio, send me an email and I will send you those couple of issues of GRTR so that you can read more about what Jim has written.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. I do want to mention I have problems with my voice periodically, so I'm going to be drinking water off and on, and hopefully my voice will hold up through this whole presentation. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully this will work. Can everybody see that? Hopefully. Okay,
Yes, I see it.
great. Okay, thank you. And if I would appreciate it if everybody who has the action can go ahead and mute themselves. Well, first of all, greetings, everybody. If I mention the phrase radio science fiction, I'm sure that among all of you would get different ideas on just what that means. Now, my own definition of the phrase speaks primarily to adult-oriented dramas. Most likely, I wouldn't be talking about Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon or even Space Patrol or Tom Corbett. So I apologize in advance if you were waiting for something like that. But obviously, most of us would call these juvenile shows. The presentation is going to focus on those adult-oriented science fiction that were stories intended for adult audience. One doesn't put Hopalong Cassidy or Cisco Kid in the same category as Gunsmoke, even though they're all called Westerns. And the same for science fiction. Those juvenile shows might have elements within the plays that seem science fictional, but they are, for me at least, just children's stories within a sort of science fictional wrapper. They're fun, they're exciting, just like the comic pages of the day, but they weren't intended really for adult interests. So except for one example, I won't be spending any time on them. Now, in my research, I found examples of science fiction on radio from the 20s up to the 50s and beyond. And hopefully this will change. Yep, there we go. Okay, so beginning in the 1920s, just what was the earliest science fiction heard on radio? Let's think about radio drama at that time. The earliest radio drama began about 1922 with the WGY Players and others around the country, including in my own backyard, WLW in Cincinnati. Now, if you examine these radio plays, they were virtually all adapted from various stage plays of the time. And that's exactly where I think the first science fiction heard on radio came from. What I discovered was that an adult science fictional story was heard broadcast over a small radio station in Medford Hillside, Massachusetts, with the call sign WGI at 7 p.m. on March 13th, 1924. Now, just as a reminder, that was 2 years after the beginning of dramatic radio. The play was from a popular stage play of the time, specifically Carl Chapek's Rossum's Universal Robots, or RUR for short. That station would broadcast the plays from the local college, Tufts College at that time, now Tufts University, on a semi-regular basis. And they were put on by the Tufts College Theater Group called the 3 Ps Society Players. Their director, Albert Gilmer, did all of the adaptations for radio. Now, the radio station is now defunct, but here's a listing that I found from the Radio Digest magazine of March 13th, 1924, showing the broadcast. I know it was actually broadcast as I have letters from listeners at the time praising the play and the broadcast itself. Now, Carl Čapek, seen here, was a Czech playwright who coined the Czech term robotiti, or in English, robots. It was the first use of this word to reference men like machines. The earliest audio of the play that I could find was from a Columbia workshop from 1937 of his play adapted for radio. Now, before I begin this clip, several things to understand about the story. After serving mankind since their existence began, the robots are beginning to revolt, thanks to a change that was made in their structure after Helena, a member of the organization called the League of Humanity, convinces Dr. Gall to alter the robots secretly to make them more human-like. Now, I'm going to begin this clip at a crucial moment in the third act when the newly empowered robots surround the plant and their creators, intent on destroying them all. Those inside realize that they're about to be destroyed by machines of their own creation, and the fate of humanity is in the balance. Here's the clip.
I'm not hearing anything.
I have no audio either.
No audio after you said, here's the clip.
Yeah,
Nobody has any audio?
no.
Oh, okay, I know what it is. I'm going to temporarily stop sharing for just a minute. Oh, wait, I might be able to change this. Hold on a second. I can remember where this is. Well, let me just stop sharing for a minute and reshare it. I forgot to, there's a little box you have to tick down here. Okay, I'll start this part over here. You did hear me though, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a few. Where are they? Where's
Now, real quickly, can you hear that now?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Sabry and Bussman? Why does it take so long? If they only would come. Here they are. What happened? Get down to the boat?
Yes, we got down there all right.
Are there people on board? Is there ammunition?
The ship is manned by robots. There is no ammunition.
Then what cargo is it carrying?
Leaflets. Nothing but leaflets. Here's one of them. Read it.
Robots throughout the world. We, the first international organization of Rossum's Universal Robots, proclaim man our enemy and an outlaw in the universe. We command you to kill all mankind. Spare no men. Spare no women. Save factories, transport, and raw materials. Destroy the rest and then return to work. Work must not be stopped. Why, ghastly.
The devil.
Is this actually being done, Fabry?
Evidently. They were closing in on us as we came from the boat.
Let's take a look through the window. Damnation, they've surrounded the house. There are some people in the electrical works. Fabry, telephone them.
Right. No use. The wire's been cut.
Who is to blame for all this? Nobody is to blame except the robots. No. It is we who are to blame. Gall, Bussman, Dom, and Sabry. Hallmeyer, myself.
What do you mean?
For our own selfish ends. For profit. We have destroyed mankind. Now we'll burst with all our greatness. Rubbish, men. Mankind cannot be wiped out so easily. It's our fault. Our fault. No, I am to blame for this. For everything that's happened.
You, Gall?
Yes. I changed the robots.
Changed? You... What did you say you did?
I changed the character of the robots. I changed the way of making them. Just a few details about their bodies. Chiefly their irritability.
Damn it, Gall, why? What did you do it for? Why didn't you say anything to us?
I did it in secret. I was transforming them into human beings. In certain respects, they're already above us. They're stronger than we are.
And what's that got to do with the revolt of the robots?
Everything, in my opinion. They've ceased to be machines. They're already aware of their superiority, and they hate us. They hate all that is human.
Dr. Gall, you admit changing the ways of the robots?
Yes.
Did you know what the outcome of your experiment might be?
I was bound to reckon with such a possibility.
Why did you do it then?
For my own satisfaction. The experiment was my own.
That's not true, Dr. Gall.
Helena, what do you know about it?
He did it because I wanted it. Tell him, Dr. Gall. Didn't I ask you?
I did it on my own responsibility.
Don't believe him, Harry. I asked him to give the robots souls.
This has nothing to do with the soul.
I thought that if they were more like us, they'd understand us better. They couldn't hate us if they were only a little more human.
Nobody can hate more than a man.
Oh, don't speak like that, Harry. It was so terrible, this cruel strangeness between us and them. That's why I asked Dr. Gall to change the robots. I swear to you that he didn't want to.
But he did it.
Because I asked him.
I did it for myself as an experiment.
No, Dr. Gall. I knew you wouldn't refuse me.
Why?
You know, Harry.
Yes. Because he's in love with you, like the rest of them. But it doesn't mean very much now. We're done for.
Wait, I have a plan. We can negotiate.
Negotiate?
Yes. What about the original formula? Without the secret of their manufacture, they'll all die out in 20 years. I'll say to them, if you allow us to get away safely, we'll allow you to manufacture yourselves.
This is a fearful decision. We'd be selling the destiny of mankind. Are we to sell? Fabry, what do you say?
Sell.
Gall?
Sell.
Sell, of course.
Alquist.
As God wills. Very well. Shall be as you wish, gentlemen. I'll fetch the manuscript from the strong box.
No. Harry, it's not there.
Not there?
Then where'd you put it?
I must tell you everything, Harry. Only forgive me.
Forgive you?
Yes. I burnt the manuscript and the 2 copies.
Helena, well, you're joking, Helena. It's not possible.
Your box is empty.
But Helena, why?
When I saw the way Dr. Gould's experiments were turning out, I realized how hopeless it all was. People being killed by the robots and no babies being born to replace them. I wanted all of us to go away. I wanted to put an end to the factory. Forgive me, Harry.
Good Lord.
Well, as you can imagine, there's no hope for mankind. The robots soon overwhelm them, and all but one is killed. He's kept alive to try to show the robots how to reproduce themselves, but with none of the details left, it's assumed that he too will fail. Now, despite its dystopian theme, the play did end on a hopeful note when the 2 most advanced robots, a male and female, like Adam and Eve, go off into the new world to possibly reproduce anew. Much of the written science fiction, as well as the radio plays after the Great War, were mostly dystopian in tone as humans began to see the negative side of technology. They all harbored a boding that it might not be as wonderful as it first seemed prior to the war, given the destruction that it reaped upon men in the war, and science fiction was influenced by this. The helplessness heard in RUR will be reflected in later radio plays such as Dimension X play with Folded Hands, based on a novella by Jack Williamson, where the serving androids become so controlling that one can only fold his hands in submission. Now, as we move into the 1930s, one of the issues that I've run into is that no audio of good adult radio science fiction seems to exist. Now, there are several that were broadcast that I categorize as non-qualifiers. And this is not to dismiss them as good or bad radio. I just feel that they don't fully fit into the definition of true science fiction. And that is their purpose. That is, their purpose is not to be science fictional despite using motifs involving sci-fi. The first, as you see listed there, is Franz Stryker's detective sci-fi radio plays, Ultraviolet and The Soul of the Robot. For me, they're just that, detective thrillers using a minimum of sci-fi. One in the form of an ultraviolet ray killing off people, and then The Soul of the Robot is about a mechanized Superman controlled by a German scientist to wipe out crime and corruption. But it ends up also reaping havoc upon the law-abiding, forcing both the criminals and the citizens to join forces to destroy it. Another one came in 1931 called Phenomenon from the KMBC station in Kansas City, and it was sponsored by the Kansas Power and Light, and it was subtitled Electrifying History, with characters with names related to electricity, such as Dr. Thomas Light and his friend Jerry Powers. Almost an early product placement in my mind, and not really an attempt at real science fiction. And finally, there was Fred Shields' series, only in demo form, about an inventor, super scientist, and a man of mystery called Dr. Decimal 7. In the demo disc, it sounds more like another juvenile-oriented series involving a time machine. The 30s on dramatic radio were mainly a time for horror and hard detective and police procedurals. But there were some excellent science fiction plays written, and while the audio doesn't exist, the scripts do. As you can see here, in August of 1932, Finis Farr, NBC continuity editor, penned an original drama called Rocket to the Moon for a casual anthology drama series under the title Radio Playbill, which aired via WJZ and the NBC network. The sustained series was inserted into programming on an as-needed basis. Now, this play was subtitled A Melodrama for Radio, and it preceded Tom Godwin's science fictional tale, Cold Equations, by some 22 years. That story was later dramatized on X-1. Godwin's story was similar in theme to Farr's, about a stowaway who is discovered and whose presence affects the flight by preventing the participants from being able to return to Earth safely. Now, in the Godwin story, it was because of weight violations, and in this Finis Farr radio play, it was due to a change in their precise oxygen calculations. And to rebalance the oxygen equation, the stowaway had to be ejected into space. Now, again, despite its dystopian theme, it too had a positive ending when a way to preserve oxygen allows them all to return to Earth without the need to kill the stowaway. Another science fiction themed play that appeared on the same program a few weeks later was written by Wade Arnold and called The Tides Go Mad. In the play, an environmental disaster looms which will result in the destruction of the world. Professor Brickner has a way to possibly stop the rising oceans, which will reap the destruction. And the method that he uses involves a ray gun pointed at the moon, which would create an artificial eclipse of the moon to offset the effects on the tides that the moon is said to have. Now, an associate of Brickner's, the sort of born-again Santiago Turner, says the professor is fooling with God's will, and he sets out to sabotage the effort, but ultimately only reaps havoc upon himself. When I read the script, the production values in this play make me wish the audio did exist. Both the sound effects as well as the vocal staging seem very exciting, especially in the final scene where Turner and Brickner indirectly face off as Turner appeals to his God to stop the professor. This now brings me to the one juvenile series that I will feature here. And the reason is that it has the distinction of being the first science fiction series on radio. And of course, I'm speaking of Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Now, a little backstory. Bear with me. In the August 1928 issue of Hugo Gernsback's Amazing Stories magazine, which is seen here on the left, a series began called Armageddon 2419 AD by Philip Francis Nolan. Eventually, it was reproduced as a standalone novel that you see in the center of your screen there. Now, this was the original story of one Anthony Rogers, a mining gas engineer who falls into a state of suspended animation from a gas in a cave, and he wakes to find himself in the 25th century, 500 years later. Now, from that novel, a newspaper comic was syndicated by National Newspaper Syndicate editor John Dilley. It was drawn by Dick Calkins and written by Philip Nolan himself. The radio series Buck Rogers in the 25th Century developed from that newspaper comic strip. In fact, the name Buck was invented by John Dilley to add a punch to the strip to make the character a standout hero who it seemed could do no wrong. And it wasn't in the original novel. So in the original novel, he was actually called Anthony. Now, the radio series premiered in 1932 on CBS and ended 4 years later, but none of that audio seems to be available. But in 1939, the series reappeared on Mutual, where the audio does exist. So I'm going to play a clip from the first episode of this second series of Buck Rogers in 1939, where Wilma and Dr. Hewer are talking about some of the scientists' inventions. And by the way, that photo of Matt Crawley that I have up there is in the center. It is not implying that he was in the 1939 series. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that. Here's the clip.
What's that thing up near his head that looks like a miniature power plant with a loudspeaker on top of it?
That, Wilma, is my latest scientific achievement. My newly perfected electro-hypno-mentalophone.
Your what?
Well, you remember the mentaloscope, don't you?
Sure. When you put a person under the mentaloscope, all his memories showed up on a sort of moving picture screen.
That's right. And this is an adaptation of it. With this, the electro-hypno-mentalophone, the memories of the subject will come to us verbally, through the loudspeaker here. Provided, of course, that my calculations have been correct.
Sort of read a person's mind aloud, you mean?
Yes, that's it exactly.
Where do you ever get ideas for things like this, Dr. Hewer? Surely people don't just barge in and ask you to work them out.
Hardly. The scientific research and experimentation that led up to the development of this machine was started way back in the 20th century.
Why, I always thought that the people back in the 20th century weren't much better than savages in what they knew about scientific things.
Oh, not at all, Wilma. Oh, we owe a great deal to the scientists of those days. Were it not for the groundwork laid by men like Einstein, Fitzgerald, Compton, Millikan, and the rest, we'd be without a great many of the things we have today.
They never really got anywhere with rocket ship development or anything like that, though, did they?
Well, successful rocket flight depends on two things that have been brought into existence only recently.
One of them must be a neutron.
Yes, inertron. The material that defies gravity and makes it possible to lift a big spaceship off the Earth and away from its terrific gravitational pull without too much waste of power.
And what's the other?
Impervium. The only metal capable of withstanding the high temperature of rocket blast for any length of time.
Oh.
But now, let's go ahead with this experiment.
Yes, let's. And you can tell me how this apparatus works as we go along, and just what it does to them.
Well, there's not very much to tell you about the apparatus itself, Wilma, except that here, in this little pad under his head, is an extremely sensitive and high-frequency response piezoelectric oscillator of quite complicated design.
Yes, I guess so.
Yes. And I've succeeded in tuning it to receive the minute electronic impulses that emanate from his brain
Yeah.
through the medium of a super-radiating protonoformer.
Oh, yes, Oh, what?
In other words, we're able to obtain sufficient amplification of the impulse output to register audibly through a process of thermionic note magnification. That's all there is to it.
I think I'll understand it better when I see this thing work.
I should be very much disappointed if it doesn't.
Oh, don't you worry about that, Doctor. Your inventions always work.
I have been rather lucky in most of my experiments, haven't I?
Lucky.
Well, now let's proceed with this one.
Well, it's obvious from the clip that these inventions are terms made up for effect and have no basis in science. Electrohypnomentalophone, inertra, and impervium, they're all made up words. The storyline has a lot of science fictional flash, but with no real basis in science. And that's one of the reasons why I don't normally include the juvenile series. They're fun to listen to, but again, in my mind, they're not actually true science fiction. Now, before I leave the 30s, I want to briefly mention the elephant in the room I'm not going to be talking about for science fiction on radio, and that's Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. This is probably the one that even those who don't know radio would mention if asked about science fiction on radio. There's already enough out there that for time's sake, I'm skipping it for now. Now, moving on into the 40s. Again, there were science fictional radio plays, but when they appeared, it was within the series, not devoted specifically to science fiction. It's difficult to feature samples here, but science fictional stories could be heard in Lights Out, such as Meteor Man, Rocket from Manhattan, The Rocket by Willis Cooper in 1945, which there is a script out there and there's no audio, and it is quite a funny story. If you're familiar with Willis Cooper and his whimsical sense of humor, there's a lot of that in there. Also, Quiet Please, again, a Willis Cooper script, Adam in the Darkest Day, Hermit's Cave, From Another World, Escape, The Time Machine, and so on. But two very good ones appeared on two other series that I didn't mention here. And the first was in 1946. And that brings me to lead up to that. One of the biggest influences on early science fiction, if you recognize him at all, is the Frenchman Jules Verne. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard of him, even if you aren't a science fiction fan. It was Verne who first began to imbue his tales of the fantastic with logical scientific explanations from the scientific trends of the day. In 1865, Verne wrote a novel called From the Earth to the Moon. It was later adapted into a radio play, parts of which I'll be playing shortly here. In 1946, two former employees of Cincinnati radio station WLW, Frederick Ziv and John Sin, teamed up to produce a radio program called Favorite Story, which was created and written by two California scripters, Robert Lee and Jerome Lawrence, for radio station KFI in Hollywood. The West Coast version was sponsored by Bullock's Department Store in downtown Los Angeles, I believe. The two scripters were under contract with Ziv and handled its creative control. Now, these shows for Bullock's were live broadcast in the California region only, with True Boardman as the host, and they weren't part of the Ziv syndication of the series. In fact, I don't believe this one is actually in the Ziv syndication. The syndicated Favorite Story used Ronald Coleman as its host. Now, one of the dramas produced for that California series, and I don't believe it's out in general circulation, but it is available, was an adaptation of Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon, starring radio actor William Conrad. This, in my mind, was one of the best book adaptations of a science fiction story created for radio. I'm going to play different scripts from the drama so that you can get a feel for this radio play. Though without hearing the whole thing, it is hard to get an appreciation of just how well it was produced. Here's the opening.
We called on Mr. Carveth Wells, world traveler extraordinary. We asked him to select his favorite story for dramatization on this program. Well, he told us that his favorite actually had nothing to do with earthly travels at all. Its title, From the Earth to the Moon, by the dean of all science fiction writers, Jules Verne. So for those of you who would like to travel 500,000 miles in the next half hour, here's Carveth Wells' favorite story.
Bullock's in downtown Los Angeles, one of America's great stores, proudly originates this radio program for the nation. Favorite Story.
This is the program which stars the story. And that means our star this week is Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon.
The story you are about to hear was written more than a half-century ago by a man whose mind belonged to the age of tomorrow. And so, while telling Jules Verne's tale basically as he wrote it, we're including a few modern phrases and present-day devices which we're sure Verne himself would include if he were adapting his own story for radio today. So here is Carveth Wells' favorite story, Act One.
When I, sitting, heard the astronomer where he lectured, with much applause in the lecture room, how soon, unaccountable, I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself in the mystical moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars.
Now, the next part finds us on the launch site. In the background, you're going to hear an announcer speaking to the radio audience, even though the story originally, there was no radio at that time. This is one of those extra and updated devices that the announcer mentioned in the introduction to the play, and it is a nice touch by the scripters. Now, the images that come up in this, at least for me, were, as they were presented, remind me of a film, a silent film by Georges Méliès in 1902 called A Trip to the Moon. If you haven't seen it, that's the silent film where a projectile is launched and it shoots out of a large cannon and then it ends up landing in the eye of the man on the moon. It's interesting that the transcription disc on the left has Trip to the Moon written on it and not Earth to the Moon. It made me kind of wonder how much influence the film might have had on this play since it did precede the script. So meanwhile, here's part two.
1 minute, 40 seconds. I'm sure you of the radio audience can hear in the background that voice on the public address system here at the launching platform. Only 100 seconds to the 0 hour, the hour at which the intrepid young Frenchman, Michel Ardan, will be hurled into interplanetary space by Barbicane's jet-propelled rocket. 1 minute, 30 seconds. There's a large crowd gathered here near the mouth of the huge gun, which will fire this man-carrying projectile to the moon. At least that's the hope of Barbicane and the scientists.
Michel, do be careful.
I have my vitamin pills, darling. There's absolutely nothing to worry about.
Oh, darling, is it?
Michel and I have been getting acquainted these past few weeks.
Michel, at the instant of fire, simply relax against the bulkhead. The hydraulic mechanism will absorb most of the shock.
I'll relax all right, Monsieur Maston. That's one thing I'm an expert at doing.
And Ardan, be sure to radio us when you leave the Earth's atmosphere.
Right, Captain.
That will be my signal to pay Barbicane $5,000 of the lost bet.
Well, you'll have to pay it to Cerise, Captain. I won't be here to collect it.
Where will you be, Father?
With Michel and the projectile.
You're both going?
Remember, I told Michel he could go on one condition. And this is the condition, that I accompany him.
You'd better take your place, gentlemen. Only 40 seconds.
Well, goodbye, old friends. Maston, Nickel. Goodbye, Cerise.
Goodbye, Father.
Don't worry, Cerise. I'll take care of him.
30 seconds.
Au revoir, my darling.
Au revoir.
Come, Michel. To new frontiers.
To new frontiers.
20 seconds. 2-0. Clear the launching platform.
Stand by. Stand by. Prepare for
15
detonation.
seconds. 1-5. 1-4. 1-3.
The excitement
1-2.
here at the launching platform,
1-1.
ladies and gentlemen, is reaching a
10
fever.
seconds.
The crowd falls
9
back.
seconds.
The moon-bound
8
rocket
seconds.
is about to
7
take
seconds.
off.
6 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2 seconds. 1 second.
Well, they're on their way.
It looks as if I've lost a bet, Maston.
I think you're going to lose another one, too. I think they'll reach the moon.
And can you imagine how the world will welcome them when they get home?
When they get home?
You may have noticed in the clip that it mentions that the excuse me, that the projectile is propelled by jet propulsion. Excuse me. In the original story, it was gunpowder explosives in a really rather large cannon that launched the capsule. Obviously, by 1948, when the play was written, jet propulsion was existent at the time. Now, and one other thing is, I'm going to play the final part here, which is actually in the latter half of the play itself. The part that I didn't play, there is a period where they're actually in the capsule, and there's some things that go on, but it's actually quite ahead of its time. But unfortunately, I didn't have time to include everything. Now, in the final part, we're going to hear our travelers return home after their projectile is swept around the moon and whipped back toward Earth.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest news we have on the space projectile carrying Ardan and Barbicane. It has circled the moon and is now plunging back toward the Earth. Sometime tonight, sometime in the next few hours, the rocket-propelled ship will arrive on the Earth's surface. Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen, there's a bulletin coming in. The corvette Susquehanna off the California coast has reported that the moon-bound spaceship crashed into the Pacific Ocean. The Susquehanna steamed to its rescue and picked up both the survivors alive and in good health.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, Monsieur Barbicane and I are qualified to speak of the moon's other face because we have seen it, we have photographed it and mapped it. We have brought this hidden world into a scope of man's knowledge.
When I, sitting, heard the astronomer where he lectured, with much applause in the lecture room, how soon, unaccountable, I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself.
Cerise.
Yes, Michel.
I saw you leave. Darling, are you all right?
Of course I'm all right. I just wandered off in the mystical, moist night air and from time to time
Yes, darling.
looked up in perfect silence at the stars.
Now, considering that the story was written in 1865, and of course it was updated by the scripters, Verne's science seems to me to be amazingly accurate. Lawrence and Lee's use of poetic images from Walt Whitman, that poem that you hear at the beginning and at the end, as well as the technical details coming from Verne's original story, they're all very well executed in this radio play. The female character that you hear, Cerise, was created by the scripters to both bridge and carry the story along. She wasn't in the original story. In my opinion, since the 40s were not a time for sci-fi, the scripters had to do something to soften the whole story and minimize the technical aspects of this science fiction story for a broader audience. And the character, or the actress, by the way, in case you're wondering, was a woman named Thelma Hubbard. Now, despite having been written 80 years before the play, it's amazing how good the science is and why it makes this radio play, in my mind, excellent science fiction. I want to turn now to the other 40 series, the Robert A. Arthur and David Kogan series, Mysterious Traveler, hosted by Maurice Tarplin, who you see in the photo. The series was essentially a fantasy horror, though there were some examples of science fiction within it. David Kogan stated once in an interview that he tended to write the science fictional scripts because of his love of science fiction stories. His knowledge, however, of science seems to come more as a reader of science fiction rather than a person with a true grasp of science. And some of his efforts in this series were weak science fiction in my mind, though there was one that was an excellent example of pure science fiction. This was an episode titled 0 Hour, not to be confused with the Ray Bradbury story of the same name. Kogan's 0 Hour is about a young writer named Keith Roberts, who's played by Lawson Zerbe in this, who meets his mentor, scientist Professor Dana Friedberg, about whom he's writing a biography. Now, the professor tells Roberts about a mysterious crash in Montana that troubles him. And the two head out there to investigate, and they find that the crash was of an alien spacecraft. Now, they stop at a nearby farmhouse to use a phone to report their findings to Washington, and there they meet a man calling himself Jason DeKoven, who's actually, and this is in the play, is played by Cameron Prudhomme. And DeKoven knows all about the professor and his intentions, and it soon becomes obvious that he's a Martian on Earth who arrived early on Earth. Now, there's two scenes in this clip. In the first, DeKoven explains who he is and what he's doing on Earth. And then the second scene, which is a little later in the play, is when Roberts, now in Washington, D.C., is detained for observation and is speaking to a psychiatrist, who's also played by Cameron Prudhomme in a dual role, finds about what he has found out. The clip is a little bit scratchy, but it is listenable. Bear with me.
How long have you been on Earth, Mr. DeKoven?
I arrived in 1931.
1931?
Yes, 17 years ago. I arrived on the first atomic rocket ship.
How many flights have been made these past 17 years between Mars and Earth?
411. That explosion 10 days ago of one of our ships was our first mishap. Most unfortunate.
Those 411 flights you speak of, were all the landings made here?
Yes, this is our main base. Our ships land here at night, dispose of passengers, and take off in a matter of 3 hours.
Passengers? Well, just how many men from Mars are there on Earth at this moment?
A little over 40,000.
40,000?
Yes. 7,000 are in the United States. The others are scattered all over the world.
For what purpose?
I believe in this country you call it a fifth colony.
In other words, you are preparing for an invasion?
Yes,
But why? Why?
We Martians, Professor, are but 200 years ahead of the Earth, scientifically speaking. The Council of Mars believes that if we don't conquer Earth now, someday Earth will conquer us. It is what you might term a preventive war.
Actually going to invade us?
Yes, Mr. Hunt. We now have 40,000 agents in key positions all over the world. And our fleet of invasion ships are ready.
I take it then that we may expect the invasion momentarily.
Yes, to be exact, the Earth will be invaded on June 22nd at 8:30 p.m. New York time.
That's less than a month from now.
Yes.
And your plans are to wipe out the people on Earth?
Only if they resist. And that would be most foolhardy. Our fleet of 200 atomic ships carry weapons that will overwhelm you in a matter of minutes. As for our Martians, one is the equal of 10 Earthmen.
You don't seem to think very highly of us.
You misunderstand me. You see, we have advanced many ways scientifically. And not only do we live longer, but we Martians are 10 times as strong as you Earthmen.
You don't look it.
I shall prove it. Do you see that log by the fireplace?
Oh, yes.
Notice that the diameter of this log is almost 2 feet. Could any Earthman break this log in half with his bare hands?
Certainly not.
Watch.
Professor, did you see that? He shattered the log into splinters.
A very trivial feat. All the Martians are just as strong as I, some even stronger. You are very quiet, Professor.
I was thinking of the evening of June 22nd and the invasion.
Yes. Let us hope that no resistance will be offered. Well, gentlemen, now that you are my guests, I will show you to your room. This way, please. There are one or two things in your story I'd like to check.
Of course, Doctor. Of course. I knew you'd see I was telling the truth.
To begin with, you say this Martian, DeKoven, was it?
Yes, Jason DeKoven.
Yes, you say this fellow DeKoven picked up a log that was 2 feet in diameter and crushed it in his hand.
Yes, Doctor. He splintered that thick log into 100 pieces.
Oh, that's incredible. Would you say the log was as thick as this one by my fireplace?
Yes, just about the same size. Oh, Doctor, why are you picking the log up?
I just want to show you something.
You splintered the log into small pieces, just as DeKoven did. You're one of them. A Martian.
Yes, Mr. Roberts.
DeKoven said they were scattered all over the world, in key positions.
Quite true. We've been watching you with great amusement these past weeks. We knew your story would never be believed, not after DeKoven's clever disposal of Professor Friedberg.
What are you going to do with me? Declare me insane and confine me to this institution?
Oh, no, Mr. Roberts. You're perfectly free to leave at any time.
I'm free? To go?
Yes, any time you desire.
Aren't you afraid that someone in Washington might believe me?
No, Mr. Roberts, you no longer present a problem. I believe you said the invasion was scheduled to occur on June 22nd at 8:30 p.m. New York time. Is that correct?
Yes.
In other words, tonight.
Tonight?
Yes. Didn't you know it's June 22nd?
I've lost all track of time.
I see by my watch it's exactly 8:28. According to your story, the invasion should start in just 2 minutes.
Yes.
I'll open a window so we can see the skies. Yes. There's the Martian invasion fleet coming into the stratosphere. Mr. Roberts, I do believe your story. It is now 0 hour. The invasion has begun.
Now, there may be a moral here that if you ever run into anybody who can crush large logs that way, you may want to avoid them. But kidding aside, the neat writer's trick to this ending is that this episode was broadcast on June 22nd at 8 p.m. So as the play is ending, it's coming up to the time of the full invasion by the Martians. Apparently, it was Cogan's little effort to cross the fourth wall of the play into the world of the listener, pulling us directly into the story. This was one of Cogan's better science fictional efforts and reminiscent of some of the later science fiction on radio, as well as some of the 50s science fiction movies. This was a common theme in the science fiction stories on radio and in film, where someone with a knowledge of an invasion was not to be believed. You can hear it in the Dimension X stories, The Parade and The Outer Limit. You can also hear it in the film Invasion from Mars, among others. There we go. Now this takes us into the 50s and the golden age of science fiction on radio. This program was the first adult science fiction series and began a string of series on different networks, all devoted to 100% adult science fiction. The series was titled 2000 Plus, and it appeared on the Mutual Network. It tried to create original adult science fiction episodes, unlike its competitor, Dimension X, which mostly used stories adapted from the original. A lot of the radio plays on 2000 Plus fell flat, in my opinion, as too trite, and some of the science was questionable, possibly because the writers were radio dramatists and not science fiction writers. But there was one play in particular, however, that stands out as very good. This story is reminiscent of the film The Day the Earth Stood Still, as you'll hear, but it was also full of its own social commentary at the time. There it is. Okay. It was a warning story typical of 50s science fiction. It was written by Judith and David Bublick, two writers who wrote scripts for The Shadow as well. This play was titled When the Worlds Met, and it reflects the attitudes about the military-industrial complex and the destruction of mankind following on the heels of the Korean War and World War II. To understand this clip, the Earth has been contacted by Martians who want to come to Earth to meet the humans. Now, their intention is to come in peace. Our military doesn't trust them completely and they prepare all sorts of weaponry in case of an attack by these Martians. When they land, they request that a representative enter the spaceship to talk to them.
Enter, Earthman.
Huh? Well, how can I? I'm closed in by 4 solid walls.
Follow the light, Earthman. The walls will not impede you.
Molecular reorientation? Changing the density of solid matter at will?
We achieved that 10,000 cycles ago, Earthman.
Where are you, man of Mars? This room is flooded with light, but I see no one.
We are not ready to reveal ourselves.
The people of Earth are waiting to see you, to welcome you. There is nothing to fear.
We are not afraid. Dixon.
You know my name?
We know many things. That is why we are sad, filled with revulsion.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
Through the dark spaceways we came to you in peace. You said to us, come in peace. But the escorts you sent to honor us were armed for destruction. The very ground on which we now rest seethes with radioactive potential.
Wait! You've misunderstood us. These weapons are for defense against you, not attack.
Many cycles ago, we of Mars learned, as you Earthmen will someday learn, that wars are fought, men are slaughtered, civilizations wiped out by those who attack with weapons of defense.
But our world is at peace now.
Your peace is not peace. It is a thin cloak which covers the hates and fears and savagery of primitive beings. Observe, Dixon. On this large screen, we have for hours been viewing your people in many parts of your Earth. Watch.
The Senator.
Listen.
I warned you it was a trap. We'll never again see Dixon alive. I told you not to trust foreigners. Just give me the word and I'll blast them all into Kingdom Come.
You must not be deceived. He's only one man. The rest of us are different.
Are you? Look at this. From another part of your civilized Earth.
You have been a traitor to our party. You've been guilty of bourgeois thinking. You have sold us out to the enemies of our people. You will pay the penalty.
by them.
Then we reveal a more civilized area. The country of your birth, Dixon.
Too good for us. Hang him, I say, hang him. Through. String him up in the highest tree in the square. Lynch him, lynch him, lynch him.
Now you know why we shall not reveal ourselves to you. If you are like this to these of your own kind, what will you think? What will you do when you see us, strange as we are?
Don't go. We know you may be different from us, but we can all meet in peace.
Earthman, peace must be achieved through toil and sacrifice of those few among you who understand its meaning. It may take many cycles, but in the end, the day will arrive. Then, and then only, we will return. Go back to your people, man of Earth, and give them the message from Mars.
Well, there were many excellently produced science fictional stories on radio, and there's just too many to present here. Most of them aired beginning in the 50s when science fiction itself was maturing as a medium. When NBC was preparing to premiere Dimension X, the show's producer, Van Woodward, told us that they were surprised by Mutual being the first. They thought that they were only competing with CBS. He said he chose the adaptation over original scripts because he felt that the best stories came from writers who were steeped in the field. And I tend to agree with him. But there were also some from past radio that were equally good science fiction, as you heard earlier. What I hoped to do here was to give you an impression, forgot about clicking that, to give you an impression of why I find adult science fiction on radio to be serious stuff, and it is worth listening to. All in all, because most of adult radio science fiction was written under the constant cloud of a threat of war, whether it was after World War I and II, or under the threat of nuclear tensions, it was often pessimistic in tone, unfortunately. There were some very good positive stories, however, but they were always generally outweighed by many others with dystopian theme. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll awaken some brain cells and we'll see what I can do. Hang on a second, let me stop some things here. Stop this. Oops. Stop. There we go.
That was just wonderful, Jim. Thank you. Thank you for sharing a piece of your considerable knowledge with us. This is just, I am dying to delve more into this. And now I know where to begin. So that's great stuff.
Thank you.
Are there, I'm sure some of you have questions. In fact, there was a question that ended up in the chat during, I think, one of the earlier clips from George D. And it said, is that Adele Ronson?
Yes, it was Adele Ronson. I don't know who the male was, or Dr. Hewer was, I believe, Edgar Staley, I think. But who played Buck Rogers, I haven't been able to find out in that 39 series. Somebody else may already know that, I'm not sure.
Well, the presentation is terrific. Come on, guys, I know you've got questions.
Mr. Woodner.
Yes.
Did anybody ever try to dramatize When Worlds Collide on radio?
Not to my knowledge, no. I've never found anything from that particular film.
Mr. Wisner.
Yes.
Question. CBS, and I had a very brief show called Beyond Tomorrow, and I'm curious, was it a series or were those just auditions in April of 1950 in May?
All we were able to find out over the years that we checked, and I've never been able to get into any CBS archives, but it was most likely just auditions. There was a number of newspaper articles that kept saying it was going to be broadcast, but I really haven't been able to find any example of where it actually did broadcast. And there was only, I believe, 3 that were ever produced. For some reason, CBS, I think maybe the overwhelming aspect of NBC and a little bit of Mutual, they just seemed to suddenly get out of that, trying to create a science fictional story. They did work on one, I believe, but it just never came to fruition. And for the most part, it just ended up being Mutual, NBC, and later ABC.
Did ABC, the show Tales of Tomorrow?
That's correct.
Was both on ABC and CBS for just a few weeks in '53.
That was in '53. That's correct.
Why? First of all, why the switch, and why did you think that show did not make it?
Well, it was also it became a television series, and I'm not really sure why. I can't really answer to why it didn't make it. Science fiction kind of waned a little bit in the 50s. There was a strong group, but Dimension X was mostly a supportive group of fans that kept, every time they were thinking about going off and ending it, they would write in. And of course, when Dimension X was on, it did go off eventually, and there was enough fan surge that they came back with X-1, which is essentially the same NBC staff and crew and so on. But as to why the other one did not succeed, I can't really answer that.
Jim?
Mr.
Yeah.
Frank?
Charles, okay. 2 of my favorites are Courtesy and Mars is Heaven. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Ray Bradbury Theater 0 Hour, but the radio play is just so much better than the TV.
I agree completely. I came across a, it's not really a quote, but Susan Douglas, you may know her, she was a radio historian, and she referred to what she called the Zen of listening. And it had to do with your imagination, being able to create a much clearer picture. And that may be why some, in the early days of 50s television science fiction stuff, it just didn't quite come across the same, because you could imagine what these ships looked like, what, the various things that occurred, what these monsters looked like or whatever. And it came across much better, obviously, in your imagination than they could ever create on television. And that was one of the failings of television at that time, until later you get into the later, the 90s and the 2000s, when the technology began to catch up and you could literally create any kind of creation.
I'm thinking now too that I did a Twilight Zone that was kind of like Mars is Heaven. And again, the radio show was, the radio play was just a heck of a lot better.
Yes. Yep. I'm very fond of the radio plays.
And thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. Widner, this is Edgar Russell, and in the late 1980s, early 1990s, there were 2 science fiction shows that were syndicated over National Public Radio. One was Technicolor Radio, which was an anthology series set in space, and the other was Netherdrome. And I'm wondering if you have insights about both of those series.
Unfortunately, I don't. I knew about the Netherdrome, but I'm not familiar with it technologically. What was it called?
Technicolor Radio.
Technicolor
yeah, it
Radio.
ran for 2 seasons, about 26 episodes.
I will have to look it up and see, because I really had not come across that. My interest sort of begins to end with the 60s and so on. A lot of that NPR stuff later on was when everything had started to fade. Now, there was a series, I believe it was carried over NPR for a while, called 2000X that was done, but I'm not familiar with the first one that you mentioned. So,
yeah, it's Technicolor Radio, but it's not spelled like Technicolor. It's got a big K in it.
Okay, I'll look that up and just see if I can find out more about it.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
Did you enjoy the science fiction shows that were, first of all, did you like Exploring Tomorrow? And then in the 60s, when Theater 5 did science fiction, they did other genres as well. How did you like the science fiction on Theater 5?
I thought that they were very good. Actually, they're fairly well done. Again, by that time, at the time, I was not, I was starting to move on to other things. I was as far as graduating from school and so on. But as far as after the fact, I liked a lot of them. There just really wasn't much that I could say about them. But the only problem I had with Theater 5, again, they had good writers that dealt with it, and I believe some of them may have been adaptations. But as far as well, I'm losing my train of thought here. But I did enjoy them. So.
And you like Exploring Tomorrow?
Yes, I did. The problem with Exploring Tomorrow, and we spent a little time on that in that first book that we wrote, there were a lot of shows that were either Dimension X, where they had cut the beginnings and the endings off, and then put them on, at least collectors I'm talking about, put them out as Exploring Tomorrow when they in fact weren't really. I know John Campbell Jr., who did the opening to that, made the comment to my co-author at the time that if you don't hear him on there, then they're most likely not from Exploring Tomorrow. But of course, nowadays, and this again goes back to the 70s, and I don't think the editing processes were as sophisticated, but most of what we found back in the early 90s that we were working on, I found a lot of shows that turned out to be Dimension X that were being taught as Exploring Tomorrow and so on. There's not a lot of Exploring Tomorrow that's available. Let me just grab this real quick. I can't remember exactly, but there's more that have come out since we wrote the original book. And that was the thing. The book was written in 1996, or actually published in 1996. And there was very little available at that time. And so a lot of it came through either things that we could find out, or my co-author was Meade Frierson III, who was mainly involved in science fiction, and he was a science fiction, involved in science fiction fandom and so on. And he would find things occasionally and talking to people through some of the organizations that he was involved in. So. Anybody else? I know it's getting late, so. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. It was really wonderful. I could have listened for another hour, but then of course, that would have made a very long club meeting.
Believe me, I went over this several times. I think I started with about 60 plus minutes and I had to really cut it down. And there's a lot of things that I really wanted to include, but I just couldn't get it all in there. So
yeah, we'll save that for the next time round.
Sure, there you go. Okay.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Really,
thank you.
It was just wonderful. So, Sally, answers to the quiz. I hope people had a chance to jump into the quiz. And
yeah, it's been running in the corner of my screen. So it's still going. And it looks like we had half of the group fill it out on the poll itself. I am going to end the poll now. Sharing results. Can everyone see? Thumbs up that you can see the results.
Yes,
thank you very much.
Yes,
all right.
Thank you.
Time for, oh man, grab it. There we go. All right. Time for our answers. Let's see how well we did. This is for your final marks before the new school year begins. So I hope you all studied well. Number one, who were the two youngsters the Great Gildersleeve on NBC had in his household? I really wish it was Kilroy, but it wasn't. It was Leroy and Marjorie, which looks like most of us got on the poll. Leroy and Marjorie. That is C. C is the correct answer. If you remember him always saying, Leroy, something about his voice. Number two, Flying High with Sky King on Mutual were the teen duo of who? Let's see how we, looks like most people selected Penny and Clipper. We had a few other selections and the majority has it. B is the correct answer. Penny and Clipper. Penny and Clipper. Number 3, in Meet Corliss Archer, what actor portrayed her boyfriend named Dexter Franklin? Was it Tommy Cook, Richard Crenna, Sam Edwards, or Walter Tetley? If you were the 3 that selected C, Sam Edwards, you are correct. Jack notes that he spoke to our club umpteen years ago. It's a very mathematical term, umpteen. So it's a very specific number that I don't know. So there you go. Sam Edwards, C, played Dexter Franklin. All right. Number 4, Aldrich Family evolved from a Broadway play. I did not know that. That was an interesting fact for me, Jack. Evolved from a Broadway play by Clifford Goldsmith. What was the stage title? We kind of had a little bit of smattering all over the place here. Most people selected A, Those Tender Years. I'm sorry, majority. You do not win this time. I selected D, What a Life, and I got it right. Look at that. And I didn't even study for the quiz. Look at that. What a Life. D is the correct answer. Number 5, Captain Midnight and his secret squadron on Mutual included 2 teenagers named, what were their names? Most people said Chuck and Joyce. A few. I'm glad somebody selected Pete and Repeat. That was my personal favorite. I really wanted to select Pete and Repeat, but I did not. I also selected B, Chuck and Joyce, and that is the correct answer. Number 6, Maudie's Diary was an excellent but short-lived teen comedy, and who played Maudie? Whit Mason played Maudie. Mary, Sherry, Carrie, or Perry. It sounds like a really bad like the Lennon sisters, or Andrew, like a girls singing group from the 40s. Here are the Mason sisters: Mary, Sherry, Carrie, and Perry. Well, we were kind of all over the place here, but nobody selected Perry. No, nobody was going to go with, no. All right, well, good for you, because
you should have made it Perry with an I.
But yeah, it could have been Perry with an I. Oh, Jack, you could have won us over then. But if you were some of the 3 that selected Mary Mason, you would be correct. Guess
That one wrong.
I selected Mary. A, Mary Mason is the correct answer. Mary played Maudie. Try saying that 5 times fast. Don't actually do that. Number 7, Archie Andrews was based on a comic strip and comic book created by which state? Mr. Maine, Mr. Carolina, Mr. Montana, or Mr. Washington? Which state? Jack, you're always trying to get me. You always get me. Which state? We were kind of smattered all over the place. The majority on the poll said C, Bob, Montana. You are correct. Bob Montana created Archie Andrews. C is the correct answer for that one.
Oh, you did? Oh.
Number 8, the Tom Mix Ralston Straight Shooters. That's a really intense title, which I'm just going to say, like, for a radio that seems longer than the show probably was. Had 2 juvenile pals. They were eventually written out of the series. Them's the breaks. Who was the pair that got kicked out? I really hope it wasn't Bert and Beverly. Are they here? Are you here? I hope you weren't kicked out of the show. Could it have been? Nobody selected them. Could it have been Rusty and Judy, Travis and Jackie, or Jimmy and Jane? The 5 of you. that selected D, Jimmy and Jane. You are correct. Jimmy and Jane were booted from Tom Mix's show. We'll have to find out the drama and why later from you, Jack. But a young George Goebel played Jimmy for a little while. Jack notes. I'm sure there was some drama there. Number 9. Who was Judy Foster's boyfriend on A Date with Judy? I hope these are real names that you selected from various radio programs, because this was just silly. Was it Woozy Winkle? Oh, Judy, you can do better. Oogie Pringle? I'm still saying you can do better, Judy. Squeaky Hingle? Oh, bad choice. Or Oswald McTingle? Really, Judy, we gotta get you out more. Just saying. But the majority has it on this one. B, Oogie Pringle. Oh, Judy. Really. Judy and Oogie. Imagine the kids. Number 10. William Bendix voiced the father on The Life of Riley, and who were his offspring? Chippendale? Nice try. No. Sonny and Cher? No. Mark and Marcia? No. The correct answer is D. Junior and Babs. Junior and Babs. D is the correct answer for number 10. Jack, always a pleasure. And I got more than one right, so I call that a win. I hope you all passed and can move on to the next grade, and we'll see how well you do in September. It's Frank, you're on. Make it extra hard so we can get that baseline data for the new school year, please. Excellent.
It is really good to have you back, Sally. Thank you on behalf of the whole club. And Jack, you outdid yourself this time, especially on the answers to number 9. I mean, I was in stitches, and I was looking forward to see Sally cold read those answers. I don't know how you kept this somewhat straight face. So excellent. Well done.
It was rough.
It was great.
Good.
Very, very good. Well, this has been an absolutely terrific meeting.
Amen.
And thank you all so much. Thank you, Jim Widner, for joining us, and all of the assembled talent, Frank, for the first 15, and it goes on and on. So thank you all. Maybe I'll see some of you at Mank next weekend, I hope. Until we meet again in September over Zoom, have a wonderful time, and I will adjourn the meeting now and stop the recording so you can express thoughts that will not live forever and anon on the internet or in the cloud.